Can you imagine suddenly losing someone you love, whether to illness or a tragic accident? None of us are ever truly prepared for such a loss, but today's case is about someone who went far beyond denial, consumed by the fear of being left alone. This case is one of the most bizarre in recent memory, and to this day, many questions remain unanswered. Let's dive into the story known as the Bangbae Mummy Case. In December 2013, the Bangbae police station in Seoul's Siacho district received an anonymous tip. The caller reported that a man who had battled cancer 7 years earlier had suddenly disappeared. Rumors had long swirled around his home. Neighbors whispered that the house was haunted, some even claiming they had seen the ghost of a man standing on the veranda. Others reported a foul smell seeping from the property. Although police had visited the home multiple times over the years, no one ever answered the door. Suspicion grew until, on December 26, 2013, investigators obtained a search warrant and finally forced their way inside. At first, the house appeared well kept and tidy, but when officers entered the living room, they were met with a shocking sight. The body of a man, long deceased, lying on a bedsheet on the floor. Even more disturbing, the body was astonishingly well preserved, mummified. His nose, teeth, and hair were still clearly visible. The National Forensic Service found no signs of foul play, but the cause of death was impossible to determine after so many years. What unsettled police even more was the reaction of the man's wife, Mrs. Cho. When asked why she had kept her husband's body inside the home, she appeared confused by the question. She insisted her husband was not dead. She explained that he only looked unwell because of his liver cancer, but to her, he was still alive. Investigators soon uncovered a chilling detail. For 7 years, she had continued to wash his body and change his clothes every day. Even more strangely, she wasn't the only one living in this delusion. The couple's 3 children also greeted their father whenever they came home, as if nothing had changed. Mrs. Cho told police that the family lived a normal life, convinced he was merely sick, not gone. For outsiders, this explanation was almost impossible to believe. Those who knew the family described them as happy and close, which made it all the more difficult to understand how something like this could happen. The deceased husband had once been a high-ranking public official, while his wife, Cho, earned a substantial income working as a pharmacist. To those around them, they seemed like the picture of a happy, devoted couple. Cho often told friends that if she had the chance to marry him again in the next life, she would do so without hesitation. But friends noticed a change in him after his cancer diagnosis. They recalled that he seemed to be suffering from a breakdown. He confided in them that his doctors had said modern medicine could not cure his illness, and so he began turning to religion in search of hope. Not long after, he discharged himself from the hospital and chose to treat his condition at home. His last hospital record dates back to late 2006. After that, he simply vanished. Neither his closest friends nor his colleagues ever saw or heard from him again. Concerned, some of them tried visiting him at his home, but his wife would always turn them away, saying he was too weak and needed rest. Cho was a devout church member, and within her congregation she often spoke of how tirelessly she cared for her sick husband. She would tell others that he was unable to move and that she even had to wash his hair for him. And so, for years, the family's unusual arrangement went unnoticed by outsiders. What seemed like devotion and caregiving concealed something far stranger. It was only when police forced their way into the home that the shocking truth finally came to light. Once news broke that Cho had been living with the mummified remains of her husband, rumors and speculation spread quickly. Some believed she had kept the body because of extreme religious beliefs, convinced her husband would one day be resurrected. But investigators clarified that she was a devout Catholic, not a member of any cult. Even so, many questions remained. How could this strange arrangement have gone unnoticed for so many years? And how had the body been preserved in such remarkable condition? Some wondered if Cho had used chemicals to slow decomposition. After all, she was a trained pharmacist. But the mystery deepened when forensic experts found no evidence of embalming or chemical treatment. Normally, decomposition begins within minutes of death. Once the heart stops pumping blood, cells are deprived of oxygen and quickly begin to die. Bacteria in the abdomen multiply rapidly, producing gases that bloat the body and cause foul odors, which in turn attract insects. Yet in this case, none of that seemed to have occurred in the usual way. According to the National Forensic Service, the man's long battle with liver cancer and years of chemotherapy had left his body extremely thin and frail. This likely led to accelerated dehydration after death, a natural process that contributed to the mummification. Additionally, investigators learned that Cho frequently sprayed disinfectant on nearly everything she touched. Some experts suggested that her constant use of disinfectants may have helped prevent insects from accelerating her husband's decomposition. Still, these remain theories, not proven facts. What made the case even more unsettling was not only that his body had been preserved for 7 years without any special equipment, but also that their children seemed to live a normal life all that time, as if their father were still alive. Cho was arrested on charges of abandoning a corpse. However, prosecutors later decided not to pursue criminal charges. They determined that her daily care, washing her husband's body, changing his clothes, and applying disinfectants, did not amount to intentional abandonment. They also took into account her mental state. During questioning, she repeatedly insisted that she never believed her husband was dead. Experts later described her condition as delusional disorder. In her mind, her husband's body was not a corpse, but a living person who might wake up at any moment. According to police, she even told them she slept beside him every night, and that sometimes she could hear his footsteps. The case took an unexpected turn in July 2015, when one of Cho's coworkers accused her of fraud. According to the claim, since her husband's death in April 2007, Cho had been receiving his leave of absence benefits and salary, amounting to more than $164,000. Prosecutors discovered that Cho had even gone to her husband's workplace and applied for voluntary retirement on his behalf, saying he was too ill to do it himself. On this basis, she was formally indicted on fraud charges. However, the court ultimately found her not guilty. They noted that Cho already had a substantial income as a pharmacist and had not attempted to claim her husband's life insurance, even though she was eligible. To the court, this suggested she had no clear criminal motive. She was acquitted, and life returned to a fragile sense of normalcy. Yet in the weeks following the discovery of her husband's body, it was reported that Cho struggled deeply, unable to move forward or adjust to life without him. This was the story of a woman who could not let go of her husband, so much so that she lived beside his body for 7 years, convinced he was still alive. It remains one of the most bizarre and tragic cases in Korea's history. To this day, the mystery lingers. How was his body preserved for so long, and did the entire family truly believe he was alive? That's all for today. Thanks for watching.